Good evening, fantasy football fans. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Slant, brought to you by ProFootballFocus.com Fantasy and powered by DraftKings. Michael, the Panthers are playing Monday Night Football tonight, so thank goodness you're here with me so we can talk about fantasy and I don't have to watch this game because...
I was going to say, I'll pull you off the ledge, Scott. It'll be okay.
The Panthers could be a whole theme tonight. Did you know if they won tonight that they would actually reclaim the temporary lead of the NFC South at 4? I think they're 6-1 or 4-5-1. I can't even remember. Below 500. That's how great the NFC South is this season.
Yeah, New Orleans is 4-5. I think Carolina is 3-5-1. So good luck with that.
It's brutal. So let's talk some fantasy football. Later on in the show, we're going to discuss which backfields we're just done with for the fantasy season this season, at least if we can help it. And then we're going to get into some of the rookie wide receivers who have continued to perform extremely well this season. But first, I think the major news point of the week, Michael, is the Carson Palmer injury. It looks like he is going to be out for the rest of the season and maybe longer with a torn ACL in his knee. And that does a lot of things. For one, there's obvious real NFL response here as the Cardinals improve to 8-1 and could be one of the best teams in the league, and that's going to be really intriguing. But there's a lot to go with here from a fantasy sense, too. And let's start with it for Palmer owners. Now, I know going into the season there might not have been a lot of people relying on Palmer, especially then as he ended up missing several games in the middle of the season, but Palmer's been surprisingly effective. I think he threw at least 2 touchdown passes in every game that he played this season until this one on Sunday that he left early with his injury. So, on a per-game basis, he's actually been one of probably the 6 to 8. If you were relying on Palmer, maybe in a 12 to 16 team league, are there any other quarterback options that may be out there that you think could substitute in, especially as the playoffs are approaching?
Well, I would say tonight's starting quarterback might be one, and Mr. Sanchez. Now, it's not to say he's gonna light the world on fire, but look, I had the same dilemma last week where Sanchez became available, and he was really, quarterbacks this late in the season don't just magically become available, at least starting ones. So other than Sanchez, I don't know, man. I think it's probably pretty slim pickings, right?
Well, there are a couple things that may be working in your favor. For one, now that we're a week away from being done with the buys, people that have owned backup quarterbacks for guys like Phillip Rivers, I think Tom Brady maybe on bye, and then like Andrew Luck maybe too. So as the next week or two are over, guys that were holding 2 quarterbacks may end up dropping one, and then maybe you'll be able to luck into one. Especially maybe if you're in a 12-team league, maybe more so than in a 16-team league. But I was just looking at some of the Yahoo available guys. These are guys that are available in 50% or more leagues. And again, that's across all league sizes, but still. Ryan Tannehill still available in more than 50% of leagues. He had a really bad start, 2-7, 1-1 at Detroit, but that was extremely predictable. Detroit's been by far the hardest matchup for quarterbacks this season. So you're a big Tannehill proponent, aren't you? He's still available in a lot of leagues.
Yeah, I was going to say, that surprises me. I would have thought, more people at the very least would have needed a bye week streamer and picked him up. So, yeah, I would be all over that personally, especially this, like I said, this late in the season if you are needing someone because of an injury. Yeah, I'm very surprised by that.
Tannehill has some what I'll call brand name defenses up ahead on his schedule. He's got Buffalo this Thursday, so if you pick up Tannehill, you need to pick him up and play him quickly. And Minnesota, Jets again. And remember, the Jets, while they're very stout as a run defense, are very gettable as a pass defense. So I don't think his remaining schedule is something to be afraid of necessarily. That's an option.
And they did hold Ben Roethlisberger, he of the 6 touchdowns per game, to only 1, Scott. So just keep that in mind.
Was I the only one that was just completely ready for that to happen? Because I was like, too many good things are happening right now for the Steelers.
I think there is some truth to things that are hyped up too much, and that one just seemed like too obvious. Like there was going in, there was just no shred of anyone's doubt from anyone that he would throw for like 8 touchdowns. So that's okay. That's okay.
Tannehill an option. You mentioned Mark Sanchez an option. We'll find out after tonight how he fares. I'd like to see him start a couple of games before I start penciling him in as my playoff starter, but fortunately you have that time to prepare. Remember that Sanchez does face Seattle in Week 14. Not sure whether that's a scary matchup anymore or not. But just additionally, Alex Smith, just one interception since Week 1. He's available in a lot of leagues. If you have a good team otherwise, which you may if you're starting Carson Palmer as sort of a later option there, he makes a lot of sense, especially in the playoffs when you want somebody that's a conservative play that won't kill you. I feel like he's a good option there. And then, can I say this? Ryan Mallett, he's the guy that's out there probably even in deeper formats. Because obviously he wasn't starting before the bye week, but he'll get his first start this next week, Week 11. He has Jacksonville twice and Tennessee coming up, so kind of a favorable schedule there for Mallett. I don't know what to make of him. Do you think he can be a top 20 to 22 quarterback the rest of the way?
I think so. I mean, look, Ryan Fitzpatrick, while I think in real life was not doing well, I mean, I'm going to get killed to say this, had a fairly decent season going as far as a fantasy perspective goes. He wasn't completely terrible. He had a couple multiple touchdown games. So I think there's potential there. I'm not going to bank on it, but it wouldn't surprise me. Just like, for the reason you just said, that schedule's fairly easy the rest of the way.
That's true. Okay, now let's flip this back a little bit to the Cardinals. Maybe not a lot of people have been relying on the Cardinals' skill position players other than Andre Ellington, but again, if you're looking at a deeper format, that may not be the case. To me, there's been actually a pretty big split here. I know we've talked about the Larry Fitzgerald versus Michael Floyd thing a lot earlier in the season, but lately Fitzgerald has rebounded quite nicely, and Floyd is all but come invisible. But I've noticed that there's actually some pretty compelling splits between those two when Drew Stanton is at quarterback versus when Carson Palmer is at quarterback. And obviously with Stanton here, you're talking about 3 starts in weeks 2, 3, and 5. But in those starts, Fitzgerald had 22 targets to Floyd's 20 to John Brown's 16. So pretty even there between Fitz and Floyd. Fitz had 2 more yards overall. And with Palmer, Fitz has 39 targets this year compared to Floyd's 29 and John Brown's 36. So Floyd is really the third wide receiver when Carson Palmer's been under center. And Fitzgerald almost has twice as many yards as Floyd over that time as well. And when you just look at the profile of the quarterbacks, it actually makes a lot of sense. So this year, Carson Palmer, 9.2 yard average depth of throw. Drew Stanton, 13.4 yard average depth of throw. And then look at the receivers. Fitzgerald, 9.5 yard average depth of target. Floyd, 8.8 average depth of target there. Floyd is the downfield option, and Stanton is the one willing to go down the field. So are you optimistic at all about a Floyd rebound? I bet in a lot of leagues he's actually been out-and-out dropped. I dropped him 2 weeks ago, and I think it was a 10-team format. But even in 12-team leagues, I could see people dropping Floyd.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, now would be the best time to get him because, like you said, a lot of people, I think, are jumping ship and dropping him at this point. And quite honestly, it couldn't get any worse, I think, for Floyd this year, right? I mean, I think yesterday he had 2 catches for 15 yards, which I know because I had him in several of the daily games that I play, and, man, that was brutal. But you truly cannot get a lot worse than that. So yeah, I would be on it. I think he'd be a great value. And look, I think that's across the board. I think, in dynasty leagues, he could probably be had for something a lot more amenable than he would have before, for sure. I think the one thing to keep in mind is Arizona has a pretty brutal schedule going forward as well. I mean, they play Seattle again, San Francisco again. So, it'll be interesting to see if Stanton. It's not like he did great in those 3 games. I mean, he did have a completion percentage under 50%. But look, he didn't have any interceptions, and he had 3 touchdowns, so 1 a game. But we'll see. But yeah, I think with Floyd, I think now's going to be your best time to get him.
You mentioned across the board, but is it really across the board? Say in a 10-team standard league, are you picking up Floyd? Because I mean, there's a lot of guys that I feel like you could argue. I mean, do you even think he's a top 40 receiver the rest of the way?
I think just with as good a team as Arizona is and as good a player as he is, personally I think he is. Now, given it's entirely contingent on your situation. Meaning, look, if you've got 2 or 3 stud receivers in a 10-team league, then you're probably set. But just like we alluded to with Palmer, if you had an injury this past weekend, or maybe you finally jumped off the Steve Smith bandwagon, I don't know, but a guy like Floyd is there, and look, the talent's still there, and there's still potential. And look, time's running out on this season anyway, so if you're truly desperate, I think Floyd's probably an okay option.
We'll probably circle back a little bit to Floyd to compare him to some of the rookie wide receivers when we get to that part later in the show. But next up, Michael, I think this is going to be a pretty fun game. Let's talk about which backfields you're done with for the rest of this season.
Can I say
this is going to be really satisfying. Do what?
Can I say all of them?
You can. Well, not quite, but you can get pretty close. I was coming up with what I consider to be the contenders of teams whose backfields you're done with, and I came up with nearly half the teams in the league. So I was like, wow, yeah. Not exactly the glory days of fantasy football for the running back position, but let's just take them team by team. I just went arbitrarily in order of positions based on, I think, the NFL.com teams page. So I'm just going to go through these guys, and then we can talk about it. So let's start with the Bills. Fred Jackson returned this week, actually a couple weeks earlier than we expected, off the bye here. Didn't really do much. What do you think about Jackson the rest of the way? Was that just a one-game blip where he just needed to get his feet wet, prove that he could get out there, and then he'll return to his, I don't know, high upside flex option the rest of the way?
I think so. I mean, look, I've learned to stop doubting Fred Jackson, 32-year-old Fred Jackson. So personally, I think it was a one-game thing. And look, I think it's proven that Kyle Orton has made that offense better under center rather than E.J. Manuel. And I think that can only serve to help a guy like Jackson stock the rest of the way. So, yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock into one game for Jackson. Now, look, if it starts to become a trend the next 2 games, I mean, season's almost over anyway. But, yeah, I would still be looking to pick Jackson back up after his injury.
I am too, and it's all about the schedule for me. It's just because the Bills get Green Bay and Oakland in 2 of their 3 playoff weeks, which I think are probably the 2 best matchups you can get as a running back in fantasy right now. So I'm picking them up based on that upside, but I'm legitimately concerned that this may end up being a work timeshare with all 3 backs. Last week we saw kind of a surprise, I thought, with Bryce Brown getting a lot of work in the receiving game. And while Jackson's been successful as a receiver and runner, while C.J. Spiller has been on the field and catching some balls, but if Anthony Dixon is getting run too, this could end up going pretty badly pretty quickly. But I'm picking him up as an upside play for now. All right, next up, I don't even think we need to spend time on this, frankly, but the New England Patriots.
Nope. No.
Yeah. Okay. Nope. Okay. Good. We can move on.
Avoid and move on, Scott. That's the advice we have for people.
My stat is that Shane Vereen has had 5 fantasy points or less in 4 of his 9 games this year. This is the exact situation you want to avoid in your fantasy playoffs when a 0 can just absolutely end your season. So I would try to do that.
Scott, I'm convinced, Scott, it's Bill Belichick just trolling fantasy players on purpose. Yeah. And I think he's just messing with us at this point.
I think, we talked about that a few weeks ago, how Belichick is probably just raking in the money on DraftKings, playing his own running backs. And, we have to figure out what his username is so we can predict this ahead of time. But we'll get back to you on that.
If I see a guy with, Jonas Gray in 10 of his lineups, then I know who it is.
Exactly. All right, next up. This is kind of a funny one, but I'm going to call it out anyway. The Cleveland Browns. So all 3 Browns running backs scored a touchdown last week when the Bengals just got trounced. What do you make of this?
That's also a coach trolling fantasy players, Scott. That's all that is. So
it may be. We've kind of gone back and forth. Early in the year, we thought it was Ben Tate. Then he gets hurt. Terrance West comes in as effective, but then loses his job to Isaiah Crowell. Then West gets the job back. Then Ben Tate returns, but isn't actually any good. I don't know what is going on here. Just give me these guys in order, and are any of them worth the fantasy play?
God, I don't even know. I don't even know, because once you think of one, you immediately think, well, no. I mean, that's the other guy did better. My first inclination is to go Tate just because he's the veteran, but then you think back to last week, and West was really the lead guy there. Neither one of them is a 50% play, I would say. So yeah, good. I mean, you know what? Godspeed to the person that can navigate that backfield. And look, for all we know, they may end up winning the division and like going to the Super Bowl, giving all three of those guys 10 carries in a game. Who knows? I wouldn't bet against it.
Well, let me reframe the question a little bit, because Terrance West has had 15 carries and 26 carries the last 2 weeks. How many more weeks of 15 or more carries does he need for you to feel good about using him as an RB2?
I would say probably one more. That would be 3 in a row, and then yes, I think that's probably a trend. Because look, 3 games is 20% of your season, so obviously they're committed to it. And look, they've got aspirations to make the playoffs. I think they're trying to really find out what's going to work in the playoffs and really try to gel a lot before then. I don't think they're gonna like try to drop Manziel in the second to last game of the season. I think they're going to try to find some cohesive unit to roll with for the last month or so and get ready for the playoffs. So, yeah, if it's West one more time, then consider me convinced.
All right, I like it. Next up, we've got the Tennessee Titans. Just when you thought he was done with the fantasy conversation, Bishop Sankey gets 17 carries last week, only manages 58 yards and doesn't score, but also gets 3 catches for 19 yards, while Sean Green only got 3 touches on the game overall. Do you see this as sort of the way things are going to roll going forward, where Sankey is clearly the guy in Tennessee? And does it even matter?
No. I'll just make this very simple. No, it will not matter. I think we've learned Ken Wisenhunt, at least for fantasy purposes, is no good. He's just horrible. I mean, all the way around. I mean, here's the guy that was supposed to come in, and look, he's an offensive guy. I mean, people were assuming that he could bring some sort of innovation to an offense that sorely needed it, and so far it hasn't happened. And look, I think they'll probably give Sankey the carries the rest of the way to get him, to get some experience in and toughen him up a little, because I think they have aspirations to use him next year full time. But would I take anyone on the Tennessee backfield, much less the team? No, not right now. And now you've got Delaney Walker, the only salvageable piece, who got just laid out yesterday and concussed, so he's probably going to be out for a while. It's just, I would not go near Nashville with a 1,000-foot pole, Scott. That's just me, though.
Would you rather have Sankey or Shane Vereen the rest of the way?
Oh my God. I would probably lean Vereen just because he's in a better offense, and there's at least a track record there of his production. Now, again, it's entirely up to Belichick if he cashes it in or not. But I would still go Vereen over Sankey. Wouldn't you?
Yes. I apologize. That was an unfair question to play during the "Which backfields are you done with?" section, and I won't let it happen.
I'm just saying, Scott, you're driving me to the point where I'm looking for the rope, and I'm wanting to end it right now. So
far though, it hasn't been as bad as I expected, because we're not done with the Bills. We are done with the Patriots. We're not done with the Browns, and we are done with the Titans. So we're 2 for 2, or
50%. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's going to continue though. The Denver Broncos, Ronnie Hillman, he sprained his foot and is out for 2 weeks, and now Monte Ball could be back anytime now. In this game, it was a little bit surprising to me to see C.J. Anderson be the one to really come in and benefit with 13 carries for 90 yards and 4 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown. So all of you C.J. Anderson deployers this week, good job. Juwan Thompson just got 4 carries for 8 yards. With the injury to Hillman, what's going on now in Denver?
I entirely expect C.J. Anderson to start and lead the team in carries next week, even if Monte Ball is healthy and back, which he is assumed to be. I'm not even saying I get it, because I don't. And if you can get it, Scott, please tell me. But I think they just draw some they put names in a hat before the week starts of practice, and they pick one and they go, okay, we'll just try you out and trot you out and see what happens. Because all of them have their strengths and weaknesses. Let's face it, that's why they're doing this. There's no one back that is well-rounded enough to give the job to full time. You have Hillman, who, look, the knock on him was pass protection. That's why he didn't start initially. The knock on Ball, at least early in the season, was he could only get 3 yards a carry. So I don't. Is there a rhyme or reason to that equation, Scott? Is there, or am I just missing it?
I would have felt a lot better about it if Thompson had been the one to come in and benefit from Hillman's absence, because then at least I would have thought there was a pecking order, and now I'm just not sure. But I guess the relevant question, there's two things that you could make a play at fantasy here. One is you can hold Hillman, because if he's only out for 2 weeks, then he'll be back and he'll be able to play a game before the playoffs start. And then if he does well in that game, maybe you can roll with him. The other play is you can pick up Ball, because it's not out of the question that Ball can just have his job back. I mean, that was at least a small possibility when Hillman was back and healthy in the first place. But are either of those things that you're willing to do?
In a 10 well, actually, even in a 10-team league, I might. I mean, look, the segment we're on now is how awful the running back games are across the league. So I think you got to take any chance you can get. And look, like you said, either one of these guys could start. It's really a toss-up who's going to be the guy in the next couple weeks. So I think I would take a chance on either one of them at this point. I mean, if you got a guy in your league that's dropping Hillman because he's hurt, I'd pick him up. And likewise, if Ball is still out there because he's been out for a month, I'd get him too. I mean, it's too lucrative of a position to not take a chance on, and especially with the dearth of available running backs now, I think it's almost necessary to get one of the two, because you just don't know. And look, you could hit the jackpot for one of them if one of them gets a stranglehold on the job the last month or so. I mean, look, that's a running back one in a lot of cases.
I don't know what to do. that's the advice there for you. But I'm generally of the agreement that you want to take the upside play, but we're just running out of time for that to potentially happen. All right, the next backfield, we've got the Oakland Raiders. I don't even know if this is worth talking about, but Aaron McFadden for 14, JD 3 for 10, as they were just smoked by Denver. Anything to talk about here, or are we just done with the Raiders?
Yeah, we'll see you next year.
Okay, just checking. All right, this one's kind of like the Broncos, but the San Diego Chargers. Ryan Mathews has missed 9 weeks, but he could return to face Oakland this week. You know how much I love to face Oakland with my running backs.
We all do.
Game, yeah, if he comes back in time for this game, where would you rank him?
I truly believe they're going to hand him his job back. Look, Brandon Oliver had a very good couple of weeks when he first started. But him, along with, the San Diego offense in general, has kind of been in a slump the last few weeks or so. I would look to them to give him the job back, meaning Mathews. And look, I'd probably slot him, not that much lower than what he was, which is, for me, a running back too. So I'd be looking to get Mathews off the waiver wire if he's still out there.
Just looking at all these teams that have no running back options, I feel it's almost certain that I'm going to rate Mathews in the top 20 this week if he ends up playing. Now, a lot of that's matchup based, but still. So, yeah, you're right about Oliver, too. Only 55 yards on his last 26 carries. That's over his last 2 games. The magic seems to be gone there. So you can expect him maybe coming in as a passing down option, but I feel like you can feel pretty confident that Mathews is going to get 15 to 20 touches a game if he is back and fully healthy. Okay, here's maybe a new one to talk about, but the Detroit Lions. Reggie Bush came back and was healthy this game, at least for a little while. That introduced a bit of a 3-headed running attack as Riddick got in there for a little bit and actually scored the eventual game-winning touchdown, and has been sort of a receiving monster in a little bit of his time so far this season. But we have Joique Bell. He was sort of the guy that people thought could maybe be an RB2 this year. But now, what are your thoughts on Bell, Bush, and Riddick?
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I think to me, throwing Riddick in there is still pretty new. I mean, it's a new concept. So, but you're right. I mean, Bell has just not done what I think we all had hoped he would do this year, especially in that kind of high-powered offense. And look, Reggie Bush is doing what Reggie Bush does, which is get hurt most of the time. Reggie Bush is a very fragile person. So, Look, I'm intrigued by Riddick. I really am. I think if he can prove to A, stay healthy, and B, be effective, I think they'll roll with it. I mean, look, the running back position in Detroit is a fairly thankless job. I mean, everyone knows what you're going to do there. You're going to chuck it up to Calvin Johnson, and hey, look, if he's not open, you throw it to Golden Tate and call it a day. So, if I were to pick one the rest of the way, I might go Theo, quite honestly, just because I think, like you like to say a lot, I think he has the most upside there. And look, it's a good offense, so if someone can hang on to that job, I think they do pretty well in it.
Interesting thought. I think that Riddick is a really sneaky dynasty league ad or keeper league ad because I could definitely see him catching 50-plus balls next season. But for the rest of the way this year, I'm less sure. Bell is the one that I want to be good, but it's just not really happening. He had just 10 of the 17 running back carries in this game. And the more important thing is Bell has been sort of a sneaky PPR option the last couple of years, but he hasn't exceeded 2 catches in a game since week 2 this year. That's just not something they're going to Bell for anymore. It probably isn't something they should have been going to him for in the first place, but I think this is a little bit of a change in offensive scheme with the turnover that has happened in Detroit. So I don't think you can consider Bell to be more than, say, a 30-catch running back these days, which means he's not more than a low-end flex option, frankly. That's a little disappointing, but I guess in a way you're hoping that somebody in the backfield gets hurt so the other guys can have a little bit more work the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I think Scott, 30 catches I think is extremely generous in Bell's case. So, yeah, I don't look for him to be relevant going forward. But
yeah. All right, Minnesota Vikings. This was a little tricky to determine because obviously the Adrian Peterson thing is hovering over all of this, but ignoring that even, we have Jerick McKinnon who's been very efficient running the ball but hasn't had very many opportunities near the goal line. As Matt Asiata has been sort of vulturing that work. Let's say that for whatever reason Peterson gets ruled out for the rest of the season. What do you think of McKinnon?
To me, McKinnon's still the guy to own there. I mean, he's getting a majority of the carries, and yeah, believe me, it sucks that Asiata's taking the goal line touchdowns away. But look, if you can get a guy, especially in the league how it is now, that can get 15 to 20 carries a game and is the clear-cut starter, I think you got to take him. And look, like you said, he's been very efficient over the course of the season. And look, I'm kind of high on the Vikings to be at least better offensively the rest of the way. I think with Bridgewater, getting more and more of a grasp of the NFL in general. So McKinnon's still it for me. Probably no better than a running back 2 going forward, but. Look, like I said, if you can count on a guy to get a majority of the carries week in and week out, I think that's pretty valuable.
I agree. I think that he's a solid running back too, even. So he'll score eventually. It may not be from close, but he's been pretty explosive so far. 2.79 yards after contact per attempt. That's the 6th best among qualifying running backs this year. I think he's legitimately good. So if Peterson's out, I think you can run with him. If Peterson's back, then I suppose that Peterson comes back as an RB1. Okay, Atlanta Falcons.
Well, then I think McKinnon's. I think they'd still want to get him involved in a change of pace role, which certainly would warrant him being running back 2. But I think could potentially still have some decent value. But anyway, I digress.
All right, Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, they've been going with 4 running backs a lot this season, but Steven Jackson is the primary of the 4 guys. Is Jackson someone you're considering in 10 or 12 team leagues?
I would. Not that he is. I mean, let's face it. He's a shell of his former self, both in real life and fantasy purposes. So, but look, I go back to if a guy's going to get 15, 20 carries a game, I think that's pretty valuable, and he has been. And I mean, even though he's got 3, decent options behind him, well, maybe 2. I'm not going to say Chris Rogers is a decent option, but they're still going with Jackson, even though I think you can see the season swirling down the toilet. Although, as I say that, they're also only 1 game back of first place, so it's not like they're completely out of it yet. So, but yeah, to me, I think Jackson is one of those guys that on the surface it sounds bad and it looks bad and it smells bad, but look, at the end of the day, he's still getting 15 carries and and any goal line work, at least recently. So I'm still in on Jackson as a very, very low-end running back 2 for me.
Okay. I don't think he's even close to a running back 2 right now. But I think he's better than you're giving him credit for as well. 2.68 yards after contact per attempt is actually 10 best among qualifiers, which is a good thing because the Falcons can't block. So there would be 0 yards happening at all if he wasn't getting them after contact. But, Sunday was the first game all year that he's had more than 60 yards rushing. It's a touchdown gamble. And you say that he's getting used in the red zone, and he is, but he's not being exclusively used in the red zone. 2 weeks ago, I remember when Devontae Freeman came in to finish off a drive there. It's just, I feel like it's a total dice roll if you're using Jackson, and maybe in a very deep league, but in a 10 or 12 team league, I'm definitely not considering him a running back 2, and that means that I'm definitely using a wide receiver over him at a flex right now.
Sure.
But I don't know. The Falcons have 3 wins on the season, 1 win versus the non-Tampa Bay Buccaneers opponents, and yet they're a game out. The NFC South race is amazing. Okay, you ready for some trivia, Michael?
Yes.
This is only tertiary related, but you're going to like this. Can you guess which running back with at least 60 carries leads all running backs in Pro Football Focus elusive rating this year?
I could not, but does he play on the next team that we're going to talk about?
He might, yes.
Well, the only running back on that team with 60 or more carries would be DeAngelo Williams.
Oh, good guess. It's Jonathan Stewart.
Oh, he has 60 carries? Really?
I think he probably has more than DeAngelo, in fact.
Wow.
But, yeah, not a lot more. But
I would not have guessed.
Enough to make him a qualifier. He's got a 134.4 elusive rating. Second place is Ahmad Bradshaw with 96.4. Third place is Marshawn Lynch, 79.4.
One of these things not like the other, Scott.
If you buy into that, then he's been a very effective back when he's touched the ball. He actually has looked great as far as I'm concerned. He's actually 5th with 2.94 yards after contact per attempt as well. So, Michael, I think the important thing here is for you to save me from myself because, the Panthers' playoff schedule is really juicy. New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Cleveland, Atlanta.
Running back 1. He has it up written all over.
Can you talk me off the ledge? Can I say pick up Jonathan Stewart, or is that a bad idea?
I'm going to push you off the ledge, Scott. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Look, we've covered this before. When he plays, he's actually very good. He really is. I mean, it's just he hasn't played. I mean, truly, he's been injured more often than not in his entire career. So, look, I'm all for it, man. If he's available in a 10-team or 12-team league, yeah, I'd say go get him. And look, every game that they play is a game closer to DeAngelo Williams finally collapsing on the field. So I'm all for it, man. No, I'm with you. I think Stewart, if he plays, is a very high upside running back too. I really do.
I can't tell if you're joking or not. Can you just?
I'm not. No. I really am not. Seriously, we've covered this. When he plays, he's very efficient, and it doesn't surprise me at all the stats you just said. The key there is just to get him healthy and keep him healthy, because it seems like every time he walks on the field, he breaks something, and it's all lower body injuries, which for a running back is the kiss of death. So. No, I'm in all seriousness, I am on the Jonathan Stewart bandwagon. I will go down, I will fall off the cliff with you, Scott. I will be there for you.
Okay, well, I appreciate that solidarity. I'm not really sure what to advise fantasy owners with here because I feel like you need a deeper bench because you can't really play Stewart right now. But I would like to have him even in shallow leagues as long as my bench was deep enough because I feel like the upside is there for the fantasy playoffs. I don't agree with you about DeAngelo Williams. He's got actually a very light career workload given his age because the Panthers obviously haven't committed to anybody for the bulk of his tenure there. But I feel like Stewart may be good enough that he can overcome that. That would be more of a deeper league play, but a split carry load there with the easiness of their schedule in the playoffs. I want to own him if I can, but obviously there are a lot of guys that, especially a receiver, you might want to own instead. But keep an eye on Stewart because he could turn this around. Okay, next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just when we thought that Bobby Rainey may have this job, instead Charles Sims, the rookie, comes back off IR designated to return and ends up leading the backfield in carries this week. 8 for 23. Rainey just 6 for 14. although Rainey was more effective as a receiver, 4 for 42. Even Mike James got 4 carries. So is this just a disaster? It doesn't seem like Rainey's ever going to get the chance, really.
Yes. Disaster written all over it. Look, they can't decide between a quarterback, Scott. How are they going to decide between 4 running backs now? It's just a mess. And look, they are true. I mean, and this is sad. They're the one team in the NFC South that is out of contention. So, yeah, it just seems like every week there's a new starter there. So, look, I fully expect probably Sims to to get the start next week. But that doesn't mean I would pick him up just because. Look, at the same time, he could ride the bench too, for all we know. I mean, Lovie Smith is a fickle guy, Scott. Okay? No one can figure him out. So, yeah, that would be a situation I would avoid.
You say they can't choose between their quarterbacks, but that's because they have 2 bad quarterbacks. So,
well,
no good option.
Touche.
Isn't Bobby Rainey actually good? I mean, he seems like he's good. I wish that they would give him a chance, but I don't think they're going to. So I would say you can drop him.
Well, yeah, but they said the same thing about Mike James last year, that when he came on for Martin, he looked pretty good. They drafted Charles Sims, who was supposed to be in the picture from the beginning before he got hurt. So apparently they just have 4 like above-average running backs to choose from and 2 very bad quarterbacks to choose from. It's a bad combo, Scott. It's not a good combination.
Well, just call me skeptical. Okay, next up, we got the Rams, St. Louis Rams. The Trey Mason, rookie, 14-plus carries 3 of the last 4 weeks, but only 1 touchdown. Is Mason somebody that you're thinking about maybe using going forward, hoping the touchdown luck turns around, or is this just the Rams aren't going to have enough touchdown opportunities for anybody to really do anything there?
No, I think that's probably true. Meaning, I don't think he'll pile up the touchdowns anytime soon. But I definitely think he's entrenched as the starter going forward. I mean, they seem pretty committed to him, and they definitely seem committed to not even allowing Zach Stacy on the field. So, for those reasons, I think they like the combo of Mason and Cunningham, sort of in that passing down role. So. No, if Mason's still available, I would definitely pick him up for the rest of the way.
I would too. But who's going to have more touchdowns the rest of the way, Mason or Jerick McKinnon?
I would probably still go McKinnon because I think he's the better overall running back. Plus, I would give him the edge as far as being in the better offense to create more opportunities there. So I'd probably go McKinnon on that front.
I would too. Okay, last team here, we've got the San Francisco 49ers, your team. Frank Gore really reestablished himself here with 23 carries, only 4 for Hyde, although both scored a touchdown here, and both players have just 3 touchdowns for the season. So what do you think of Gore? Is he a running back too? Is he significantly worse than that? It's hard to know. They seem to get hot and cold on Gore these days.
Yeah, as you alluded to, being a 49er fan, it's rather frustrating because it seems like the games they lose, the 49ers, are the games that they don't run the ball with Frank Gore. I mean, just look at the game last week where they lost in literally the last second. They had a goal-to-go situation and didn't give it to Gore. They did a rollout, and then they, of course, fumbled the snap. So I'm still in on Gore as a low-end running back too, only because I think he's a no-doubt starter on that team. Now, like you said, it's not like they're racking up the touchdown, so I don't think that'll magically reappear. But do I think he's a good shot to get 15 to 20 carries a game still going forward? Yeah, I do. So I would look. He's on the fence to me as a running back 2 and 3. I'll say that.
I'm right there with you. Okay, time for our last segment tonight, and that's the rookie wide receiver update. That's a lot more exciting from a fantasy perspective than a lot of these running back teams.
It's a lot
so that'll be good to talk
I know
about.
That much, Scott.
This wide receiver class has definitely delivered on its expectation of being like an historically great wide receiver class. Because in fantasy, these guys, a lot of them are usable. A lot of them have been really, really good so far this season. And I'm sure you know the answer to this trivia question, Michael. Do you know which rookie wide receiver has the highest yards per route run among qualifiers? So that throws out Martavis Bryant, by the way, but among qualifiers.
I'm going to say Kelvin Benjamin.
That's close. He's third at 1.91 yards per route run.
Okay.
Care to guess again?
Mike Evans has to be one of the two.
Very good. He's 2.17. That's the second best. But there's still one rookie that's actually better than Evans and Benjamin.
Well, then I'll go the obvious and say Sammy Watkins.
Good guess. He's sixth, the 1.76. I'll give you one more shot at this.
Okay, I'm going to go out of left field and say Odell Beckham.
Okay, that's a good guess too. He's fourth at 1.89. But as I'm sure every listener is shouting at their iPods right now, it's obviously Taylor Gabriel of the Cleveland Browns. 2.30 yards per route run so far this season.
Of course. How could I forget? My bad.
Total stun.
He didn't play on Sunday, Scott, so it was out of sight, out of mind. So
anyway, that was fun. But the point is, guys like Kelvin Benjamin, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham, Sammy Watkins, all those guys that you named, they've been tremendous so far this season. So let's talk about them a little bit for the rest of their season value, and then we'll hit their dynasty value a little bit after that. Let's start with this. Which rookie wide receivers are you comfortable using as, say, a top 30 wide receiver? So that would be at least a flex in standard 10-team formats or 12-team formats this year. Which of the rookie wide receivers are you comfortable using the rest of the way?
For me, I would think I would probably limit it to the four we mentioned. So Mike Evans, Sammy Watkins, Odell Beckham, and Kelvin Benjamin. I think those guys are, at the very least, the top targets for their teams, and if not the top target, they're gaining rapidly in the case of Mike Evans. So I think for those guys, those would be my my no doubters. And look, is there some guys that you could sprinkle in there? I think on a week-to-week basis, yeah. I think Jarvis Landry's showing me something, at least in PPR leagues. You've always got the threat of Devontae Adams should a Jordy Nelson or Randall Cobb injury occur. And same goes for Dante Moncrief in Indianapolis as well. If any of the top receivers there has an injury for an extended amount of time, I think he could be very good too. So, I would say four for sure, but there's a handful of ones after that I would strongly consider based on the situation.
Yeah, I think you definitely identified the top four, the big four, so to speak, with Benjamin, Beckham, Evans, and Watkins, not necessarily in that order. But there are three other candidates that I want to at least ask you about right now. Martavis Bryant, he wasn't a qualifier because he's only made it through, I think, 5 games now. But 3.65 yards per route run, by far the most among any of these guys. He's just going touchdown crazy. I think he got 6 scores over the last 4 games, something crazy like that.
Yep.
Is Bryant, is he usable? Is he a top 40 guy? Is he a top 30 guy?
See, we've discussed this before, our different tendencies. I'm a very conservative fantasy player. A guy like Bryant kind of scares me, only because he's the guy that will get 3 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown, right? Meaning it's so contingent on the long pass play, which he does very well, obviously, like you said. He leads rookie receivers in average yards per route run, but to me, it's a risky play with a guy like that because you have to hit on the 2 or 3 receptions that he's going to get, as opposed to a guy like, let's say Beckham, who's just racking up the receptions, or even a guy like Watkins, who is the clear-cut top target in Buffalo there. So to me, he's not there yet. Now, if there were ever an official changing of the guard in Pittsburgh, meaning he supplanted Marcus Wheaton in the starting lineup, then I would consider that. But in his current role there, he's not quite there for me yet. Look, I think he's probably obviously a very high upside flex play possibility, and he's great for, say, these daily games that we have because his value is still relatively low compared to his production. But for me, it's just too much to ask for on so few catches per game.
But let's compare him to some of the other touchdown-dependent type of wide receivers. Would you rather have Bryant the rest of the way or Torrey Smith?
To me, I'll probably be the minority. I would probably take Torrey Smith, personally. I think
you're right. I don't think that's the minority either.
Okay, that's the right I mean, I think Steve Smith is obviously his production's fallen off the wagon, and I think Torrey Smith is there to pick it up. So I would go Torrey Smith the rest of the way.
What about Bryant or Terrance Williams, who actually I think failed to record a catch during Tony Romo's big return in London?
In that case, I'd probably go Bryant in that instance. I think Pittsburgh is definitely trying to get him more involved. Definitely more than I think Dallas with with Terrance Williams. I think Dallas is pretty much, hey, if your name's not DeMarco or Dez, I don't really want to have anything to do with you. So,
Well,
yeah,
Jason sort of taken away a lot of Williams' looks over the last few weeks. Not
right.
sure if that's going to continue or not, but not a great time. Okay, there are two other rookie wide receivers that I want you to consider too. One of them is the guy that I think a lot of people thought at the beginning of the year could be the best of this bunch, at least for this season, and that's Brandon Cooks of New Orleans.
Hmm.
He's been pretty productive lately. Is he a guy
Yeah.
you could potentially consider using the rest of the way?
Yeah, and actually, I will admit, I think I would probably include him. That was an oversight on my part. Yeah, I'd include him in the top 30 for sure. I mean, look, he's in a very good offense, obviously, and they are making it a point to make him a big part of it. And look, he's producing. I mean, he had a very long touchdown yesterday. So yeah, he would also join that group. So we'll kick it up to 5 now.
Okay, so five guys in the top 30. One more question for you. Jacksonville's Allen Robinson.
Hmm. Oh man, he would be a guy that's on the fence. I mean, he hasn't had as big a playmaking ability as the 5 guys we've mentioned, but man, he's very consistent. I mean, I think that's been his calling card so far. I mean, he's had I think 6 games or more of at least 5 catches and 80 yards. So he's on the fence for me there. He's definitely knocking on the door for that. I just think he's limited in the offense he's in, and there's not as many big plays to be had, I think, in Jacksonville than there is for the other guys we talked about.
You may be right, but ever since Blake Bortles took over as the starter in Week 3, Robinson has been in the top 15 among all receivers and targets. And so while we keep seeing guys like Allen Hurns and Cecil Shorts pop up, he's just kind of been consistent and sneaky. And I mean, maybe some of that consistency is 4 catches for 60 yards or something like that, but he's sort of quietly been there. I think he is in my top 30 as well. So great time for rookie receivers right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent a lot of time on the show already, but I want to try to cobble this together real quick. Can we do a top 10 receivers in Dynasty real quick?
Sure.
So I'm assuming that, I don't think this has probably changed, but are Watkins and Evans still 1 and 2?
Yes. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Is Kelvin Benjamin sort of the guy that may be entering that conversation?
You
Or
know,
is Odell Beckham?
I was going to say Beckham has really come on strong. The one thing that would concern me with Beckham is obviously he's taken advantage right now of Victor Cruz being out, but I would have some concern long term how they plan to use Cruz and Beckham and Randall as long as he's there. So I might still I might put Cooks at 3. I think his role is a little more.
Okay.
Yeah, I think his role is a little more solidified there than either than Beckham for sure. With Benjamin, I want to see him string together. I think I want to see him produce like he was the first half of the season. That's just how it is. So I'd probably put Cooks 3. I'd probably put Beckham 4. I think that's a pretty safe bet at that point. I don't know. Where are you on 3 and 4?
So I'm kind of similar overall here, but I'm going to leave Benjamin at 3. I think that he's just so clearly the guy that it's the safer play. And even though he doesn't have the huge speed, I feel like the touchdown floor is just really high with Benjamin. So I think I would go Benjamin 3, and I'd probably still or I don't know if still is the right word. This is sort of my preseason rank, I guess. Beckham 4 and Cooks 5.
Yeah.
But I think those 5 sort of have a little bit of separation right now. So let's see if we can just grab the 6 through 10 guys. Who is your guy at 6? I think I have a thought here, but I want to hear what you think.
I'm a big Moncrief fan in Indianapolis. I might go Moncrief at 6. It would be tough between him and Adams because they're both obviously in very good offenses that should be good for a long time. But I think overall for me, Moncrief seems like the better overall receiver, and I think him and Hilton are going to combine for a pretty potent duo for Indianapolis for Andrew Luck. So I might put Moncrief a slight bit ahead of Adams, but it would definitely be Moncrief, Adams 6 and 7, like no doubt.
Okay, cool. So Allen Robinson not in your consideration there.
Well, probably not. Personally, like I said, I think Moncrief and Adams have the better situation. And look, that's not to say Blake Bortles won't eventually develop into guys that can produce something similar. But I think Robinson would probably be my eighth. I think for me, Moncrief and Adams are the clear next two guys after that top five.
And what about Jordan Mathews?
I personally, he's the guy I think I've been most disappointed in. And then, look, it may not necessarily even be his own fault. I think, Philadelphia obviously found they found a strategy, and it involved a lot of Jeremy Maclin, and it worked. But for me, I mean, look, it's still to be determined if he can produce on the same level as the 8 guys we just said in front of him. So he would be in the top 10, but he would be definitely the bottom 2 of the top 10.
Okay. So we've gotten through, like 8 or 9 guys to limit attention. Could be Martavis Bryant, could be John Brown, could be Jarvis Landry, could be guys that haven't even really played yet, like Marcus Lee. Who are you thinking to round out your top 10?
Yeah, and all 3 of those guys are possible guys. I mean, out of those 3, if you're looking at upside, I might go Bryant only because I think very soon he'll supplant Wheaton as the starter. And I think, look, that's also a very good offense to be a part of. That they should have the key pieces there for a number of years, and I think he'll benefit from that. So I'd probably go Bryant there at 10. But like you said, that it's very hard. You've got Landry there. You've got even Cody Latimer, who hasn't seen the field at all this year, who could still be worth something. So. Yeah, there's a lot of guys to choose from. It would be very hard if I had to name only 10.
Whew, yeah, so what a great class of wide receivers. Well, I think we've had a pretty good show here, Michael. A friend of mine texted me that the Panthers turned the ball over on their second play of the game, so I'm really glad that I haven't been watching that. I may just go cry in a corner the rest of the night. But thanks, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Slant. Check out our other podcasts the rest of this week and all of our great work on ProFootballFocus.com fantasy, and we will catch you again next week.